Alrighty. Hey gang. Welcome back, you guys. How are you today? Another episode of Stove Chat here. Hope you guys can see me and hear me. I'm trying something new today. I just turned the bit rate up to where it's supposed to be for YouTube, and we'll see if I can stream at this rate. So hey everybody, I can see your chats. All right, so that part's working. Glad you guys are here. Tall Shadow, Carpenter Family, Sam S, and Belgian Gulch. Great to see you guys. Thanks so much for being here. Hey, do me a favor. Let me know if we got stuttering or what the image is like, and because I actually might want to restart. It says it's bad on my end. I'm getting a bad indicator. But hey, Augustus, welcome, you guys. Mr. Blueberry, hello, hello. Always learning. Hi. Oh, that's good. Thank you. Always learning. Appreciate that. Carpenter Family. All right. Okay, great. Everybody says it's good. Okay, great, you guys. Thank you. So, my stream status. Oh, it just went from bad to okay right there while I was talking. So I'm trying to broadcast at 2,500 bits per second this time. I've been running at 1250. 2,500 is YouTube's suggested minimum. So I'm going to try and hit that, and we'll see how it goes. So, Homestead Maker, all right, nice to see you. Thank you. That's good. Okay, great. Glad to hear it. So, on to the next order of business, the schedule. I apologize, you guys. I realize I had got us a set schedule, and I threw a curveball at you guys today, and I changed it. And I'm sorry for doing that. I had things kind of change up in my life this last week. I got a little bit of boat work coming back my way, and I definitely need to take advantage of that. So I am just trying not to have it come right in the middle of the day and kind of, blow a big part of my potential work day. So I think we'll see how it goes this time around, but if you guys can make it at 11, what's 11 for me? I know it's different everywhere else. But this is a better time for me, so I'm going to start doing them at this time of the day. Moving forward, and I'm flexible. We can see what works best, but I did want to try and hit Europe too, and I know that if I go any later in the day, then we kind of get them real late at night. So we'll see how it goes, you guys. But I know probably the worst person for this schedule is old Mike in Hawaii there, because it's 5 in the morning there or whatever. So sorry, Mike. So there you go. Yeah, good. All right. Awesome, Tall Shadow. Thanks for the update. So let's get right on to stove business, you guys. You guys been thinking stove stuff, building stove stuff, reading stove stuff, playing with your stoves? I've been having some fun lately, just kind of kicking around some ideas. I've had a lot of interaction with a lot of you guys, and of course that always gets me thinking. People drawing designs of their stoves and what they want to accomplish. And so those always bring up things that are fun to talk about. So one of those I want to talk about is bypasses, and Tall Shadow, I got your email, and thank you very much. That's a great question regarding bypasses and sizing. And on our way there, I want to talk about bypass configuration in different stove layouts. So I got an interesting email from a person who was going to build one of my cook stoves. Cutting wood, yeah, me too, you guys. All right, I'm stoked on that. Belgian Gulch, Tall Shadow. That's what we do this time of year, right? So yeah, I spent a lot of time with the saw this week, and a little bit with the splitter, and I kind of like to save the splitting mostly for the sunny season when it's too warm to really run the saw. So I've been out there bucking and felling as well. Tall Shadow, it's work up a sweat doing that, huh? Man. Tell you what, those are some hard workouts for me. I've got an 044 is my steel, I should say, however you pronounce that, saw, and me being as little as I am, that thing is just a beast for me. So every time I'm out there, I know that I'm going to pick it up and run it for a few hours, and I know it's going to kick my butt. So it is what it is. Just heats us up a few times, I guess. So at any rate, onto this bypass discussion real quick, just on this one build that a customer asked me about that I thought was really interesting. His plan is to build basically your cook stove and then a taller bell and then the external wall. And he wants to go from the cook stove to the bell to the wall. Yeah, tall shadow. I got enough to split when it rains for the next few days. That's it. That's me too. I like to save that for, I can do it undercover on mild days or on the nice days when it's kind of too hot to run the saw or anything like that. I like sitting there. I built my splitter hydraulic. I think I put a video up of it, but I sit down and run it. So it's actually really pretty casual. I enjoy that job. So at any rate, stove, bell, wall, external chimney, kind of all in a line, right? And he was wondering how he could do the bypass through the cook stove, from the cook stove, and he was wondering if he would put like an insulated flue pipe all the way through that bell to get to the external wall and then meet his lower chimney coming out and do a bypass that way. And I thought that was an interesting idea, but what I wanted to point out it brought up an interesting situation that illustrates a pretty good lesson that we can all learn, and that is that all of our bells, we want to exit as low as possible so that they become stratification chambers, right? And stratify, coolest gases leave from the bottom, warmest gases stay up top and give their heat off to the space. But when we're trying to get something started, when we want heat in the chimney, when we're not trying to heat the whole bell first, all those reasons, we can do bypasses in the upper parts of those bells. And we can shunt that warm exhaust right out to whatever is the next stage, ideally be the chimney, and create draft and get draft going. So in that way, we can really control the situation regardless of what's going on outside with pressure, with wind, with temperatures, regardless of what's going inside with our fuel, our burn state, all of those things. It gives you a lot of control. Now that's just normal in any bypass. But I think what a lot of people forget is that you can do that in each bell sequentially. It isn't just applicable to close to the core or the first bell. And so by doing that, and this is going to tie right back into your question, Tall Shadow, by doing that you can build big systems that have sort of sequential heating elements. And depending on how you configure it, you can have bypasses that open or close those up high or down low to close off, or ideally just up high is really the point. But in doing so, you'll create more or less load on the stove, and you'll be able to burn in varying conditions in different ways. And I'm sort of jumping around here, but really what I'm trying to say is don't be afraid to use multiple bypasses in stoves of different configurations to achieve your goals. In this case, this gentleman had, like I said, the cook stove down low and a large bell kind of up above it, and he knew that he wanted to go up and down and up. But in order to get there, from here to there, without a bypass, there's a whole lot of what's going to be cold masonry in between the burn chamber and the chimney, and you just never get that chimney warm to get the thing going. And at the same time, bypasses that go through that don't give you the ability to control how that bell heats up. In other words, you can only run just the cooktop or the whole stove. Whereas if you have, two bypasses, you could shut the bypass from the stove to the bell, but leave the bypass from the bell to the exhaust open. So you could really be heating up the front part of the stove while the aft bell is pulling really fast. Get that front part heated up and draft going good, and then close off your back. Anyways, you guys get the idea. Lots of ways you can control things, and the biggest thing, Tall Shadow, it's a simple idea, but it's something that a lot of people wouldn't consider, and that's why I'm talking about it. To me, the biggest advantage of it among all of those things, you got a ton of control. You have, variable temperatures in various parts of the stove that you can control, but more than anything is just the simplicity. It's just the fact that you can do it with basic, methods, and you're not trying to plumb things from far distances and have long actuators and insulating things that are in hot places that you want to stay cool. And so, just keep in mind that there's a lot of flexibility there, and you can really overcome a lot of perceived difficulties. And so that brings me back to Tall Shadow's question. And Tall Shadow's question, if I can paraphrase correctly, was along the lines of some people recommend volume measurements or excuse me, internal surface area measurements to try and calculate the size of their stoves, the size of their builds. And Tall Shadow, you asked me, like putting extra gears in a transmission. Exactly, Tall Shadow, the bypasses, exactly. I mean, that's exactly it. It just gives you access to a lot of different load and power settings. I mean, it's a weird way to talk about it, but that is how I think about it. You know, when the chimney is cold, when your bell is cold, you're putting a huge load on the stove. It needs a lot of low end grunt to get past there, and that means you got to have the flames burning hot. Well, you can't get them hot if you don't have draft, so you got to shift her into the right gear, right? So you can keep your RPMs up, keep the draft going, and eventually get your power up. So yeah, it is. It's a lot like gears in a transmission. So, and I totally lost my train of thought, but I'll come back. Oh yeah, the sizing of the bells. So Tall Shadow's question was something along the lines of if so-and-so recommends a bell of X size with no bypass, what is your maximum size for a bell with a bypass? And you know, Tall Shadow, it's a great question. And again, I don't mean this in any derogatory way. It's just different ways of looking at things, and that's a great question. It's one that comes up all the time. I get it a lot because of the other style of building using those measurements. I'm going to answer you and say that there is no maximum. There is no ratio. I don't disagree with the idea of ISA. I do agree that if you're going to build a single design closed system with no variables, that you can isolate it down to just this one total build that works every time. And that's what I think, and that is what Peter's going for. It's like, here's your bricks, stack them like this, gaps are exactly this big, bell is exactly this size and shape. It'll work. You'll light the fire, it'll be able to get draft and overcome the cold bell and heat up the chimney enough to run and then put that heat into the space. But it's all so narrow in its design parameters that it has to be exactly that, and it performs exactly like that. And if you want it to do anything differently, then it won't work. In other words, if you want to go like you need more heat out of it, you want to run multiple heat loads, you need bigger bells, things like that. So what I'm trying to say is the bypass just gives you the ability to make a front end and a thermal battery that are kind of decoupled from each other in terms of they don't need to interact for the stove to work. That's kind of what the lack of a bypass means, is you have to just have that whole thing work as one whole system. But by having the bypass, you can just run the front end, you can bypass the thermal battery, you can get the thing going, you can get draft going, and then you can vary how much heat you're shunting to the chimney. So you can always keep draft going, regardless of how much your bell cools off the additional gases. So I said you can go unlimited size. Now, that sounds totally stupid. There's one thing that we're not talking about that's really important to this whole conversation, whether it's Peter's fixed size system with no bypass or my unlimited size system using bypass. And that thing that we're not talking about, I talked about a little bit, but it's input. And that's the biggest variable, and it's up to you as the end user and as the builder to decide what your goals are and what your needs are, what your threshold is, what your tolerance is for loading the stove. Augustus, yes, my plans do. All of my stoves have bypasses for the most part. There's a couple exceptions where they use a different type of system to accomplish the same thing, preheating the chimney via its location. But the same idea. They're all made. Basically, my goal when I make those plans is to make stoves that people can, because I know you guys understand. We all want something different for our stoves. We want to build it ourselves, especially if we're building ourselves. And so no one is building the same stove who's building my stoves. I mean, there's a few of them that look like mine, but most of them don't look anything like mine, even though they're coming from my plans. And so my goal was to build stoves that worked for everybody. And so the bypass is mandatory in my opinion. People have bad fuel, they have bad chimneys, I'm not picking on them, I'm just saying they might have, compromised components of one part of the system. So hey, Oregon Coast Green Man. So you need to make sure that the stoves work as well as they possibly can in any given situation, or I'm going to get a lot of calls going, my stove doesn't work, it's smoking into the house. And I'll be like, how's your chimney? How's your fuel? But good bypasses or similar methods of achieving draft in all situations give a lot of leeway in the rest of the build. And this goes back again to your question, Tall Shadow. So no overarching maximum, but how long do what do you want it to take for your structure to heat up, right? Like, a lot of people are like, I want this 50-foot long bench, and they think, when they haven't really thought it through, but when they're first contacting me, they're like, I'm gonna have this huge bench, I'm so excited about the idea of burning once a day. They've been listening to some other outspoken rocket mass heater people spreading enthusiasm, let's call it. So they'll say, I want to burn one burn a day, and I'm going to heat up my 50-foot bench and heat the whole place. And so, it's important for people to understand that, the more mass you have, the larger size your bench is, the more belly you have, the more you need to put into it to get the heat through it, all the way through it, and to come back out of it. So there is no maximum, Tall Shadow, but there's probably a reasonable maximum for what's going to work. And what that is I can't tell you. And this is why I get frustrated and why I'm relaxed now, but a few years ago when that first ISA suggestion thing came out, I was all against it. Now I'm like, whatever, you guys can talk that way. But this is why I'm against it, because people get stuck on the idea that there is a limitation, and they get stuck on the idea that they're going to build this thing once and it's going to be perfect. And that's the part that frustrates me. I would much rather see people build their stove in stages. Phase 1, it's just like a space mission or anything else. Phase 1, just work out the details of, I'm not going to go through all the phases, but you know what I'm saying. Build the first thing in the house and use it, and build it modest. Build it so it's going to work, and then add to it and adjust it and tune it. And I think Belgian Gulch can comment on this, because he's been through, he's on to his multiple iterations of well used. You have to live with them for a while. You won't really get it until you live with it. And so I don't know. That's one of the reasons why the ISA and the bypass thing. I'm a big fan of understanding where the flexibility is, leaving yourself room to adjust, and not getting locked in, because anyone who's had one of these knows that they're gosh, I don't know how to say it. Like, where a box stove has like a really wide range of operating ranges, the rocket mass heaters really don't. They kind of do, but it's not as broad. In other words, if you build a stove that's way undersized because of ISA, and it's especially one that you can only burn once and then let go out, and your space is too small, your insulation isn't good enough, I feel like it's much better to leave yourself room to grow and to tune, really. So I don't know if that helps, but that's my take on it. Tall Shadow, I went off on one of my tangents there. So Belgian Gulch says, my great majestic antique wood cook stove has a bypass. Interesting. Yeah, a lot of the like all the when I was fishing in Alaska, our little boat stoves had bypasses as well. They bypassed the oven, and yeah, that's pretty common in those old antique cook stoves. And I guess in that one it probably was for the oven as well, but it might have been for startup as well. So So I'm going to go back up a little bit. Variable mass transmission. I love the idea, that word. Always learning. That's great. Tall Shadow, when we were talking about the bells, you were asking, is it better to have multiple bells versus one large bell? I don't know the answer to that. Better, I think, is not the right word. It depends on what your goals are. I think multiple bells make more. You've got more surface area, right? So you've got more mass, more heating. So I think it's more. It takes more input, but slower output. So it depends on what your goals are. I think that for the most part, less restriction is better. But at some point, you're big enough space that maybe it makes sense to have multiple bells. Again, I think you need to experiment. That's why I'm saying I don't think anyone can tell you, and I don't think you can calculate it. With your materials, with your fuel, with your chimney, with your house, with your goals, everyone, I think, needs to just build one and expect to take some of it apart next summer. It's not that big a deal. It's what's going to happen anyway. And in my opinion, it's better than thinking you're going to build it once and walk away. So I'm a tinkerer. What can I say? But I just think that's what it takes. And even if you were going to build one, like if I was going to go build one for a customer, I'd say, we're going to get this thing finished. It's going to look finished. But let's plan that we're going to come back next year and tear it apart and refinish it. Because we can make it better. And I think that you're going to go through this year and you're going to say, I wish it did this and I wish it did this. And I'll say, it can. Now that we know those are the things you want and that you're missing, we can tune it that way. So kind of hammering on that. But it's important, and it's been important about rocket stoves for a long time. The idea that you're not just going to nail it on the first time. Because I think that's also one of my bones to pick with some of the other teachers in this space. They make it seem very difficult, and they make it seem like the planning, like if you're just gonna wreck your whole life if you don't get it right the first time. And I disagree with all that. I think it's really easy. I think we should make it really approachable, but I think we should discourage people from thinking that if they sit down with a pen and pencil, they're going to get it exactly right the first time. They might get close. It's helpful stuff to do, but there's just nothing like burning it in your space. And I know that those of you who are doing that, understand that now once you've taken some time to get through them. So, Asbjorn, I hope I said your name correctly. I apologize if I mispronounced it. That's interesting for me. But he says he still dreams of the chimney-free rocket, which is an awesome dream. And so that's, you guys, I'm sure many of you have read Yanto's book, Super Efficient Rocket Mass Heaters, Super Efficient Wood Stoves and How to Build Them. Something like that is the title. Anyways, his early Cobb Cottage experiments, he really was going for that horizontal exhaust, like a dryer chimney-free rocket. And I think that it's totally possible. Again, it depends on your goals and what you'll accept. So I think the downside to them is they're really finicky and really unstable because they have no draft. So any wind or gust or odd pressure events are going to make them run weird. They're going to be much more likely to smoke into the house. But if those things are like all kind of okay with you, like if you're kind of living like that rough and tumble life, but maximum efficiency is your jam, horizontal exhaust chimney, no back chimney, I think it's possible with a standard barrel, with a real heavy duty cooling mass, with a downward slope in your exhaust. I think you can drain right out the side of your house. Like I said, sometimes, most of the time. But what the problem is you can't count on draft to keep your, temperature to keep your draft going. So it's not like now you've got the stove hot, we won't have any smoke back problems. That's the problem with the horizontal exhaust and no chimney, is that you could be running at peak burn and still get a flame reversal, and that thing will shoot fire out the J tube or out the firebox. So again, it all depends on your risk. I think Yanto ran them and liked them and thought it was, to him, he would rather have those risks and get 5% more efficiency or whatever it might be. So, interesting stuff. So yeah, Belgian Gulch is going to need tune-ups. Ed G, you're here. All right. Well, welcome. Nice to see you. And Carpenter Family says, so do you use fire clay sand mortar without cement? Yes, Carpenter Family. I always use my fire clay sand with no cement for a multitude of reasons. But one of the most important ones is because you're going to, at some point, be back in there. whether it's fixing something, whether it's making a change. And if you add cement, it makes it really difficult. Not only that, if you add cement, your cracks are permanent, right? Because everything's sealed, like everything got hard and brittle, and then you get cracks, and now you can't fix it unless you go and take the whole thing apart and chip all the cement off. If you have clay and sand and you get cracks in your mortar, you can just wet them down and seal them right back up again. When the whole stove's warm, when it's expanded, you can go around and tuck and point all your gaps, and you're good to go. So I'm a big fan of clay sand mortar. I think it's hands down. It's not a compromise. It's better than any setting mortar for our purposes. The only downside is it won't stand up to exposure to the elements. So it's got to have a roof over it. But otherwise, no cement. And yeah, a big part of that is so it's easy to rebuild, and so you can make changes, and so you don't have to worry about planning everything out so far ahead of things and get it perfect and never change it. It just leaves you a lot of flexibility. So, what amount of wood to put in? You have to know what amount of wood to put in. Yeah, Asborn, you have to know what amount of wood to put in. You're talking about the horizontal chimney and getting fire coming back out. Yeah, it's it can be scary. Tall Shadow says that's why they were originally dubbed fire dragons, because of the fire shooting at the door, and that's exactly right. Excuse me. And anyone who's lived with a J-tube has probably seen that, because even in my J-tube in my house, in my big house with a good chimney on it, you could be burning at full tilt, and if it was a windy, stormy night, it didn't happen very often. I'm going to say in the 2 or 3 years I ran that J-tube, it happened, a half dozen times that I saw. But man, it would shoot a tongue of fire out the J-tube that almost reached the ceiling. I mean, it wouldn't light the ceiling on fire because it was never sustained. It was just like and out. But it is terrifying because it's turning around and blowing all that flaming wood gas the other way, and it's scary. So Carpenter Family says, do you put a bit of ash in that mortar? Yes, if I can, Carpenter Family, I will. And if you do use wood ash for mortar, make sure you sift it. Get a fine screen, like a window screen from your house. I don't know what the number would be, not a 00, a little bigger than that. But at any rate, get a fine screen and sift it first, so you don't have any chunks in there. But ash really helps it turn it a little bit more refractory. It gives a little more plasticky hand to it, and it'll set up a lot quicker and a lot harder. And the house is crucial. I mean, that's just it. If you want to do a horizontal exhaust with no chimney, the house is absolutely crucial. Your positioning to the elements, your pressures on all sides is really important. I will tell you a tip that we use on the boats with the diesel forced air furnaces. So on the boat, you always have a problem with pressure, right? We have a fresh air intake, and we have the exhaust for the diesel burner. And if those things experience different pressures, then the thing doesn't burn very well. And so they're always going to experience different pressures. One's up high, one's over port side, one's on the transom, whatever it might be. The trick to doing that, Asbjorn, is to give your home a fresh air intake that matches your chimney. So in other words, you would just run essentially 2 chimneys, and one's your fresh air intake and one's the exhaust from the stove. And what that does is that means that your home's intake and the stove's exhaust see the same pressure effects because they're both on the same side. I guess I'm putting them up here. You're talking about doing on the side, but that's what I mean. So they're both on the same wall of the house or whatever it might be. So any wind blowing, there's not going to be one on the low pressure side and one on the high pressure side. So in that way, you can even out some of your pressure differences, and you can give yourself better chance of success. But the home is probably the biggest factor. You're absolutely right. So Ed G asks, have you ever built or seen a batchbox rocket hybrid with ability to also burn pellets? No, Ed. I've seen people try, and we've talked about this a few times, and I totally understand why it comes up. It's a great question, but I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I really think that if you're gonna go about trying to build yourself a pellet burner, your best approach is something like the Wise Way or something like that. One of those steel channel or steel tubing constructed builds. The problem with the rocket stove and trying to make them dual purpose is their fuel and air needs are just so different. Raw wood compared to pellets. The pellets just have so much surface area, but they burn so weird and differently, and then they ash up and they clog together, and then they have a very little surface area, and they just don't seem to. I haven't ever seen anyone have a lot of success, and I've always sort of scratched my head watching them beat their head against the wall trying to make a rocket stove burn pellets when there's plenty of great pellet burners out there. So that's my take on it. I would go with like a Wiseway type thing. If you're trying to heat a thermal mass, then you might be able to figure out a way to take a Wiseway front end and couple that to a thermal mass. But it doesn't make any sense to me to take the front end, the combustion core of a cordwood burner, and just try and like put pellets in it in a little basket or something. I don't think you're going to get satisfactory results. So there you go. I hope that helps. I hope that wasn't too disappointing. A lot of people really, I understand. I have wood on my property. A lot of people don't. Pellets are the next best thing. In that case, like I said, I think it's best to just plan for those and build specifically around those. Plus, you can save yourself so much space. Those pellet burners are so on an order of magnitude smaller footprint. So there's pros and cons on both sides there. Asborn says chimney can be a bad thing if cold, a fresh air intake cooling the barrel. Interesting. That's an interesting idea. Yeah, fresh air intake cool the barrel. Help push that cool that air and push it down and out. Interesting idea. Yeah, I had thumbs up. Hope that helped. Cool. Always learning. How about insulating tall chimneys for improved draft, so more heat? Yes, absolutely. So typically, in the rocket stove world, we are typically looking at like people trying to do builds on a budget, people trying to use salvage materials. And one of the big differences between a rocket mass heater and a traditional box stove is that a box stove presents an incredibly high danger of chimney fire. It's creating volatile compounds that it's depositing in the chimney, and then it has the potential to be overfired and throw 900-degree flames right into the chimney. So box stoves have this really dire safety factor involving the chimney and its ability to handle chimney fires. Rocket mass heaters, it's virtually impossible to have a chimney fire. You've got the combustion out zone a long ways away from the chimney, typically in the flue path. So there's no chance of getting flame there, let alone hot gases. My typical chimney gases are somewhere around 200 degrees. So I also don't deposit creosote in the chimney. So with all that said, box stoves use insulated chimneys 90% for safety, 10% for draw. But a rocket mass heater, you don't need an insulated chimney for safety. However, it will make an enormous difference in performance. So an insulated chimney is far and away the best choice, pretty much always, for a rocket mass heater. However, you don't see them very often because it's a really high cost option, and it is an option for most builds. It's not mandatory. And so for that optional chimney, a chimney in this house for a triple wall Class A chimney, I would have spent $2,500 on the chimney alone if I bought it new at Home Depot. So, I'm definitely not talking it down. I encourage insulated chimneys on all builds if possible, but I just want to reiterate that it's an option. It will definitely improve performance. Definitely a better deal all the way around, safety and everything, although I don't think there's really much of a safety issue with a rocket mass heater and a single wall chimney. But it will improve performance, but it will come at a cost. So yeah, always learning. I do think it's a great idea. It will improve draft, and it will give you more heat to be harvested on the front end. So yes, absolutely, 100%. So Ed G says, think about a pizza oven with a rocket to heat it. It's a great way to go, Ed. If you've looked at some of my old videos, you've seen some of my old pizza ovens. If you haven't, go back and check. There's some good ones. And our buddy Pete here, who doesn't seem to be here today, but he's got a great one going in Belgium that hopefully we'll have pics of soon. We're starting to see a lot of them. And my riserless core makes a great pizza oven bottom, but just a J-tube works perfect. So I think you should do it. It's a lot of fun. And Robin L, the barbecue oven could be used for pizza, absolutely, especially. So I designed that to be really modifiable for different people's goals. I'm a sort of a low and slow guy, so I wanted to be able to kind of wind it down and have it be stable at 300-ish degrees for doing briskets and things like that. But at the same time, it can achieve really high temperatures depending on how you configure it, depending on what fuel you use, and how you use it. So yeah, it would be a great pizza oven. If you were doing that, I think you'd want some insulation around the cooking chamber, whether it was external or internal, would be depend on your goals. And I'd probably put a pizza stone right above that exhaust and get a hot base going, or maybe even build like a fire brick split platform just above the exit. And then let the rest of the gases come up around like a central platform where the riserless riser exited under that, and then the rest of the gases come around. Anyways, a lot of fun stuff. And you know, if you go back to my old videos, you'll know that I spent a lot of time thinking about those things and always going, oh, I got to go build the next one. And so I've taken a step back because I built enough of those for me, and I don't eat that kind of stuff anymore. So I don't really have much need for those various cooking devices. But man, they are so much fun. And I highly encourage you all to build them. Kolnitsky, yo, I look forward to your weekly yo every week, bud. Thanks for coming by. So what else, you guys? You guys got some more questions for me? Who's got a build question? No pizza. No, Ed, no pizza. No more. No longer. I took a major departure a few years ago in my diet, and it's given me my health back, but I don't eat as many things as I used to, and I definitely don't cook like I used to, which has been awesome. To be honest with you, from a homesteading and a permaculture perspective, my life is more in line with those things than ever before. I'm living such a simple life. I'm providing all my own food from my homestead. I've gotten rid of pretty much all of my kitchen stuff because I don't need it. No sourdough. No, I don't eat anything from plants, my friend. I don't eat anything that grew in the dirt. If it didn't have a face, I don't eat it. So I gave up all my gardening and all my fruit trees and all my pizza, all my sourdough. Man, I made sourdough for like 10 years. I had a sourdough culture going on my counter, and I ate sourdough daily I made a new loaf every day. But 3 years ago, I got really sick, and I discovered this way of eating that saved my life, basically. So doctors were not helping me. So I just eat meat. I only eat beef, Ed. I just eat cows. So I just raise cows and eat cows. Because of that, I don't do much cooking anymore on those pizza oven type things. So that's why my barbecue, Robin, that's why my barbecue oven is a barbecue oven. Because I eat, 3 or 4 pounds of beef a day, maybe some bacon, maybe some fish, maybe some eggs, but mostly just beef. And so I've got hundreds of fruit trees that I planted on my property and my old garden, and I still have kale growing everywhere, and it's really fun to see it all growing. But what I realized, like from a permaculture perspective, is I was so wrong all those years. I was permaculturing and trying so hard to can all my produce and grow all my produce when it's so easy to live off your land if you just raise a couple cows. Actually, it's very little protein, Ed. It's mostly fat. It's about 70 or 80% fat and 20% protein. But it's so easy. Like permaculture wise, I can't believe how hard I struggled to provide my own food from plants, whereas trying to provide all your own food from animals is so easy. And I don't work like I used to, just grow, dig in my garden, but I don't need to anymore. So, Asbjorn, I don't think I'm ever going to eat fruit again, actually, or plants. I don't think so. It's been years that I've been eating this way. A lot of people call it the carnivore diet, Ed, or zero carb. Those are names for it. But yeah, it saved my life. It really has. And as strange as it sounds, it's been probably the most life-changing knowledge that I've learned in my 50 years. So, anyways, that is why my cooking is so different, is because I just am mostly cooking briskets and things like that. So when I talk about my barbecue ovens these days, that's why I named it a barbecue oven. But if you go back to my old videos, you'll see that I did a lot of high temp pizza ovens, but I've really moved away from that these days. So that's actually probably important to know that yeah, thank you, Carpenter family. That, I mean, actually, one of the biggest things when I made this change was that all of my everyone in my circle just was like, "Whoa, what happened to you? You look amazing!" Like, because I wasn't looking good, and I was really sick. So I have some form of IBD, and I had it my whole life, but I never knew about it. And so this has really given me a new lease on life with regards to my digestion, and it helped me clear up a lot of mental issues too that I think were tied up with my digestion, depression. So it's been incredible, and I would love to share it with more people, but a lot of people aren't ready for this message, so I keep it for the most part to myself. But I appreciate sharing it with you guys. So thank you for letting me share that. And yeah, I feel healthy, Carpenter family, for the first time in a long time. I actually feel fantastic. It's amazing. I wake up every day just like ready to face the day and excited about it. Yeah, and Ed, I did that too. When I changed to carnivore, I started looking at what I was feeding my dogs, and I went, "What am I doing?" And so I haven't bought a bag of dog food since then. My Chihuahua here just eats straight chicken drumsticks every day, and he's never been healthier either. So anyone with IBS or IBD, it's worth looking into. You'll see it. It's out there now. It gained popularity. I started eating this way about 3.5 years ago now. But it's gaining popularity. As Bjorn, I don't agree. I think actually, I think it would be the healthiest diet for everybody. But most people will never find out, which is fine. I think that all humans would be healthiest because meat is so easy to digest, and plants are really difficult on your digestive system. And I think all humans would thrive on it, but you'll never try it, so you won't find out, which is fine. But that's just my belief, and I respect that you have a different opinion. But hey, let's stop talking about diet stuff, because it's so strange, you guys. I recognize that. I would never have gotten here. Oh, not enough meat. Yeah, no, absolutely. The problem isn't that there's not enough meat. The problem is that there's too many people, right? No, I totally agree. Yeah, Edgy, there's a million examples of carnivorous cultures, indigenous cultures, and almost all of them were way healthier than the Europeans when the Europeans found them. As a matter of fact, they're usually all a foot taller and way stronger. The Central Plains Indians of this country were 6'6" on average, 6'4", something like that. The Europeans, when they found them, were like 5'6". Same thing with the Eskimos. Same things with the Sami people in Finland in the 1600s. I could go on and on and on. And so my observations are just that, that was when I started looking for this. I was like, oh wow, look at that. There's a lot of history and healthy history there. So at any rate, you guys, I do a lot more cooking in my barbecue type ovens though now than I did before, and so it's been a really good thing for the stoves. So Robin says and ovens cook well for planners too. And don't get me wrong, if you watch my old videos, that's what's so funny is that I was I was a vegetarian forever. I gardened. I had thousands of jars of tomato sauce, and I love all that stuff. All my green verde peppers, and my canning cupboard, was full of all my garden stuff all winter. And my oven was going all day, every day, cooking pizzas and my sourdough. And so please don't take this little, it's just my path that I've found now that I'm thankful for. But man, I loved being a foodie and having all the cooking gadgets and cooking my plant-based stuff in my ovens. I loved it. And I encourage you all to do it. And that's where these designs came from. I'm just sharing why you don't see me sharing that stuff anymore. I had to make some significant changes. It was honestly really hard. I based who I was around my gardening and my preserving and my homestead skills. And for a while there, when I learned I wasn't going to eat plants, I thought it was all gone. So it's been an interesting journey, and I'm really pleased to be out this other side and be like, oh, this is cool. I got free time because I'm not gardening, and so I'm turning it into other positives. So yeah. So Tall Shadow, you know what? It's getting really warm in here. I gotta open a window. Excuse me, you guys. So as far as guests go, Tall Shadow. I don't have anything concrete. I have been reaching out to a few folks, and I don't have anything on the schedule, but I think it's going to be a great thing to do. So I definitely want to do that moving forward. I've got a couple people that I built stoves with online, and I've got one name that I think you guys recognize that we're trying to set up a time. So I'll keep you posted, but that's something in the works. So I guess Tall Shadow, the honest answer is no, I don't have any really positive update for you, but hopefully soon. I will keep working on it. So Robin says, love my designs. Thank you, Robin. Thank you so much. And Duck, I'm doing great, man. Nice to see you. Thanks for being here. So Robin, I think it was you I was talking about we were talking about combining your stoves, if I'm not mistaken. Do you have any specific questions that I can talk about here while we're here? I don't think you and I can really get too into the nuts and bolts of your design, but just if there was any overarching questions that would help everybody, might be a good time to cover any of that, or if anyone else has any other questions regarding stove stuff, I'd love to hear them, love to help you answer them. And if not, we'll save them up and we'll come back next week. And I think next week I will probably come back at 11 a.m. I think this time is going to be what I'm going to try and target. And hopefully that works for you guys. And I'm hoping that we don't mess up and get hopefully we can still get Europe here. So yeah, Robin, that's what I think. That's exactly what I was hoping you would do, is just kind of get your mind around it, get your sort of concepts, what you want to do, and then bounce it off me, and then I'll be able to just sort of adjust that so we can make it into a working model. But that's a great way to go. Legos is a great idea. As a matter of fact, thank you for saying that. I wish I had suggested that. I had one other customer who has done that already. He actually sent me photos of his Lego build, and I thought it was such a great idea, and I can't believe I have neglected it, because I think I have neglected to mention that ever since then. This is the second time. You're the second person who's had to come up with it on your own, and I think it's such a great way to model these things, to help yourself see them in 3D space, that I need to remember to share that more. So thank you. So Always Learning, Always Learning asks, what are your thoughts on using water mass heat transfer for heat storage versus solid mass? And I gotta say, I guess I'm not 100% clear on what you mean by water mass heat transfer. I'm not sure if you're talking about transferring that heat from water then into mass. I don't think you are. I think you just mean using the water as the mass, and then using like air handlers, like a blower or radiators to get that into your living space. So, I mean, here are my thoughts. My thoughts are that solid mass is much simpler to accomplish. Water mass is exponentially better in terms of its performance characteristics. You get more energy storage per volume, more energy storage per pound, more flexibility in delivering that heat. There's a whole lot of positives to water mass, but it comes at the cost of a much more complex system. So those are the compromises, in my opinion. If you can do water mass, if it's within your means and you can come up with a system and make it simple enough to meet your goals, by all means do that. And that water heater that I have sitting outside that I built, the Walker boiler, has really blown me away in that regard, because now I've gotten to see kind of the same heater both as a bell and with a water chamber, and that water chamber is nuts how much more energy storage it imparts to that same build. So definitely water. Absolutely. So Ed says he'll have more questions after he finishes his batch box. Mini batch box 2 and 5/8 riser. Ed, I'm gonna wish you luck, man. Good luck. Will you please keep us posted on that? Maybe email me some photos if you get them, and we'll share them. But because I'd love to see it. I'll keep my fingers crossed for you. Hey, David Swanson, good to see you. Hey, David Swanson, will you please send me links to your Google Drive pictures again? Last week you asked me to share your photos, and I went and looked for them, and I thought I found the link, but I went and looked for them this week. I don't know if I have them, or at least if I do, they're just still in your email and lost. I didn't download them and put them in my folder. So email me a link, and I'll get them on my computer, and we'll look at your stove on one of these stove chats. So Always Learning says circular siphon coils from stove to water barrel. Yeah, Always Learning. So that's a pretty good way to go. Yeah, no, that should be fine. I do. I think water is great if you can handle it. Water mass and bench for longer heat. Yeah, that would be. I haven't done it, Robin, but I think it would be awesome. It would be epic. I mean, that one outside is sitting outside, and if he burned it that day before, it's warm really warm the next day. It's unbelievable, really. Yeah, Ed, it is small. That's real small, but hey, man, give it a try. One of the biggest things with the small ones is well, for one thing, the elevation ends up and even though the ratio is the same, the overall height isn't very different. So you just don't get much draw. You know, like a 6-inch one has 24 inches of difference between the feed and the exit. So you could just get a lot of sort of natural elevation induced to draft. But when you shrink down to those small things, when it's on scale, the whole thing is only this big, but that means you only have 2 inches of difference in height. To a match flame, those are kind of the same place. So what I encourage you to do is probably exaggerate your riser ratio when you're decreasing your system size. So Augustus asked, do they work better with CFB? The smaller systems work better with ceramic fiberboard, or is it still hard to do below 4 inches? It's really difficult no matter what. I mean, ceramic fiberboard helps a lot. I mean, a ton. It actually takes things from the realm of probably impossible to possible. The reason being because you only have such a small amount of fuel, it doesn't have much energy. And if you have any mass around it, it's giving that energy to the mass, so it can't focus itself, back on combustion. So it's just sort of a dying process. Whereas if you got insulated ceramic fiberboard, it can feed that energy back to itself, and it can be a growing process. But like I said, the biggest problems are ones of scale, in that you end up with elevation differences not being, you don't have a big enough delta, and you start to get boundary effects from all of your surfaces. So you guys know, like water and air, fluid dynamics, if you're running water past like the river wall, the water right next to the wall is standing still, right? Because that boundary effect, and then there's various layers and shears going on along there and all that. And so as you get smaller in your system, you're just like, more and more percentage of that system is being dramatically affected by its proximity to the sides. And so you kind of just end up with like kind of an unusable tiny little pathway in the center. So small sizes are hard. And Peter had carks down to 3 inches. I'm not sure. Carks is maybe a mistype. I don't know what you mean. But we've all experimented with small ones. And I think we've all had some success, but I don't know what you call success. I was really hopeful that I was going to make my riserless core in a 4-inch version and make like a boat stove or an RV stove. And I mean, it works, but it would suck to try and run. First of all, the wood is like, chips of wood. And so you're dealing with those, and then how can you get any significant usable heat out of such small fuel format? So I don't know. Those are just thoughts on small ones. riser is square as opposed to round. Yeah, it won't matter too much, Ed. That isn't going to make a big change in your system. Either or, I would say. Smaller riser, bigger and shorter channels after. Oh, calcs. Peter had calcs. Yeah, his table does go down. I mean, people have built some. And actually, Mike, who was on the show a couple weeks ago talking with us, his is a 4-inch system, and it works great for him. So don't let me tell you that it isn't going to work. I just meant, like, from my perspective, what I've done and what I've played with. I've done some. I just felt like there wasn't much there for me. But by all means, man, experiment. And I think there's potential for uses for really small ones if we could get them usable. But like I said, it just really depends on what your goals are, what your limitations are, what you'll accept, especially with fuel. The fuel is a big deal. You'll see, because it'll be small. And when you start to get the fire built up, there's really no room for a bigger piece. But hopefully you'll play with that. And we'll see how it goes. But keep us posted. So, in tiny rooms, yeah, no, I know, I get it. I mean, I've been wanting to build one for vans, vans and boats. So it would be really cool. Yeah, just have fun, just play with it. That's perfect, Ed. That's it. That's it. So yeah, keep us posted. I'd love to hear more about it. I would love to see tiny ones refined and be working. I'd love, like I said, I really wanted to build this little metal skinned kind of RV boat stove. I still dream about it. I'll probably keep playing with it. So love to hear what you come up with, Ed. Love to see it. So, all right, guys, we've been going for about an hour. I think I'm going to wind it down. And I think next week I'll come back at the same time, and we'll do it again. I'm going to work on getting us some guests. And in the meantime, hopefully you guys can think of your questions and come up with any, work on your build plans for next year, and let's kick them around. Maybe come up with some sketches and plans and stuff like that. I'd love to help you with them. So yeah, an RV and boat heater would be super cool, wouldn't it? I'll keep working on it. You do it too, Ed. Let's see what we can come up with. So, all right, you guys. Blue Whirl. I will check it out, Asbjorn. It sounds cool. Blue Whirl. Okay, I'm going to write that down. All right. All right, you guys. Well, thank you very much for coming by. Robin, great to see you. Homestead Maker, hope you have a great day too. Augustus, glad you're here, man. Oh, you did sneak one in. Hey, man, I really appreciate it. Do not feel obligated. I really appreciate it. I got your message. I don't expect anything, man. You come here and hang out, ask me all the questions you want. You never need to give me anything. It goes for all of you. I really appreciate it. It helps me a ton, but thanks, Augustus. All right, David, I have my email closed because my internet is I'm hoarding my bandwidth right now, but I will get the email when I sign off. So, ciao, Asbjorn. Augustus, thank you again. David, I'll get your email. We'll get those pictures up. And everybody, thank you guys so much for being here, for listening and watching, for all your support. I'm gonna hit you with the video, and I'm gonna catch you next week. So 11 o'clock next week, you guys. Okay? Let's plan on it. Have a great week. I'll see you then.